with bad Food Network audition tape. I'm sorry. I'm trying to do as many things as I can. And Mrs. Witzig, I can't see the oven, so she's going to take care of all that. So thank you, Mrs. Witzig. And also, like, this is at a campground. This might not be my best work. You know, it's not what we've always had, but some of you have read with me before. Hopefully we'll be okay. So yes, it starts in John 6, where many of you heard the phrase that Jesus says, "I'm the bread of life." Now, the backstory behind that, though, makes a big difference. So what is going on at the time is a miracle that many of you have heard the story of before, I'm guessing. It is the only miracle outside of Jesus' resurrection that is in all four Gospels, and that is Jesus feeding the 5,000. We don't know what he taught on that day. We don't know much about it. All we know is that everyone was hungry, because, you know, people get hungry, and they feed everyone with the 5 loaves and 2 fishes. You've heard the story before, right? Yeah. Okay. So, feeds everybody. They have so much food, they have leftovers, which must have been awesome and fun. And after that, they dissipate. People go their own way. Jesus walks on water. All sorts of fun stuff happens at night. But then the next day is when the story picks back up, because now they've sailed from one side of Galilee to the other. And while they're on the other side, all the people that had seen Jesus the day before are like, "Hey, look, there's Jesus." And so they start following him and walking around. And now Jesus gets all these people gathered on him, and they're all pressing in, they're bugging him. And he's like, "Listen, y'all are just here for a free meal. I'm not dumb. I gave you food yesterday. This is all you want." And they're like, "Pretty much, yeah, we are." And that's when Jesus says, "I have something much more to offer you. I'm the bread of life. I'm not just physical bread." I'm not sure what you're doing. I'm the bread of life. So, to understand that a little better, though, we have to understand what bread means. Because our view of bread in North America is much, much different than the rest of the world. Most of you, if you've eaten bread either at home or at a restaurant or something, it's an add-on. Let's just be honest. It's that thing that takes up space on your plate that really you don't want to eat, but you kind of push to the side. It's kind of like salad. You know, it's just not something you generally eat. So, we don't depend a lot on bread, because let's just be honest, like, let's look at tonight. Realistically, there was a little bit of bread tonight because we had that lovely Mexican meal. But let's just be honest, we were not focusing on the tortilla. We were going for the fried beans, or for the meats, or for the rice, except for the few of you that are dainty.
Yeah.
And ate lettuce and tortilla, call it a meal. Let's just be honest. A lot of times, that's just what bread is. It's an add-on, okay? Half the world, though, does not eat like you do. Half the world lives on $2 a day or less. So that's 3 billion people that live on less than or about $2 a day. And that $2 a day, that is not your food budget. That's your everything budget. So that's your education, that's your clothing, that's your house, that is everything is $2 a day. So do the math on that and think about how much of that you actually get to spend on food. And that's if you're in the rich half of the world, that's at $2. Some are even less. So I'll give you an example for you. Most of you know we sponsor Compassion Children. Our Compassion Child cost per child is $38 a month. So that's a little over $1 a day that we are giving them to subsidize them living. So take that, break it down, education, clothing, everything else. How much do you think is left for food? Not a lot. To give you a context with that tonight, your meal costs $10 a person. So you probably could have fed someone for about a month, maybe, for what you ate tonight. I'm not saying that to guilt you, just to let you know that's just how the rest of the world lives. So because of that, we want to get nice, cheap food. That's the idea. We can't afford to have a lot of food. So, bread. Almost every society has some sort of bread. It's kind of interesting. Like even tonight you had Mexican. Well, there's tortillas, there's things like that. And every bread is kind of the same process. It's some sort of ground up grain and water. And then you add something else to make it tasty. So a lot of you have corn tortillas or flour tortillas, things like that. You have the wheat, you have stuff like that. This is non-bread, N-A-A-N. And this is, again, it's mainly just flour and water. There's a few extra things in here to make it tasty because, you know, well, that's good bread. But it's very simple and very easy to make. When I was in Africa, the meal they ate there was sudsum. That's in southern Africa. It is one of the craziest meals because what they do, the way they cook it is completely different. is they just take boiling water. So they get like a big, huge pot of boiling water, and we've made this. It's really hard. Boiling water, and then they have crushed up maize, which is like corn, but like really fine. And so while the water's boiling, they just dump it in slowly, and they stir like crazy, as fast and as hard as they can, until it gets of this like really thick mashed potatoes is what it looks like, but it's actually more like bread, and that's what it feels like. And so basically you get this big mashed potato looking pile of bread, and that's what they will eat for most of the meals. In Canada, they would, where I lived up there, they had a thing called bannock. Bannock is literally flour and water into a brick and baked. It's not much else to that. It's very, very simple. So all these societies everywhere all over the world very much have some sort of thing that's like this because they need the filler. It's what's necessary. For the average Jewish person at the time when Jesus was alive, they estimate, I mean, obviously we did not have the FDA tracking everything they ate, but they estimate that somewhere between half and 3/4 of their daily calories was bread. Just bread. No vegetables, no meat, nothing else, just bread. Because, again, it's so easy to do. It's just how it is. It's something necessary. It has to fill the stomach. So, when I was in Africa, I experienced this. We were working, we did school assemblies, which is kind of fun. And the main hub of where we met was a Bible college. And they were super nice to us. We had lunch together a couple times. We played volleyball with them, things like that, went to chapel. And the very last day we were at that school, they gave us a meal. So I can't even describe this meal in American terms. It's so hard to do. But it was literally a piece of lettuce, a pile of sudsah, and a chicken leg, and then some chicken broth. So what they would do though, this is not like American standard, okay? When I'm saying it's a lettuce leaf, it is a single leaf of lettuce that's wilty, a little bit brown, kind of the best you could find. It is a pile of sudsah, which is nothing more than cornmeal and water, or maize meal and water, so you can guess how tasty that was. And then the chicken, I mean, it was 90% bone, and like a little bit of meat on it. And what they did is they boiled the chicken in this pot so they could get some sort of broth, and then they pour that broth on top of your sudsah and your meal and everything. So the only way you could manage to eat this sudsah is you had to like dip it in the broth and eat it, or eat it with a little piece of chicken. Now, we're eating this meal, and we're kind of looking at it like, oh, thanks. And the missionary looks at us and says, you guys need to eat this. And most of you have seen me eat, challenge accepted, not a problem. So I ate as much as I could, did what I could, and we just thought we were trying to be polite and everything. He said, after we left, he had us all together, because we stayed at his house. He said, listen, you need to understand a little bit better about what your meal was today. That school, those students wanted to give you a nice meal. So they used their food budget for vegetables and meat for the month to give you that meal. So those students ate nothing but sudsah for 30 days to give us this nice meal that we probably would have just thrown in the garbage. It was a super incredibly humbling experience to realize that what they treasure or they sacrifice for us, we couldn't even look at, and some people didn't even finish a plate because it's not good enough. It was a very hard thing to swallow, because that is how the world lives. So when Jesus is saying, I'm the bread of life, they're not seeing it as the add-on to the meal. They're seeing it as, this is the thing that if we don't eat, we die. This is the thing that if we don't have, forget it. We will not have enough to eat. We won't feed our family. Someone in the family will die, our child, somebody, because we just need bread. That's how they survive. But the other part of that too is, since they are living off bread, they also have to do this. They have to make the bread. You all, I'm going to take a shot in the dark. When you go home, open the pantry. There's some sort of loaf of bread or rolls or something, and you just take it. It's ready to go. Yeah, the rest of the world, again, doesn't get to do that. They don't have that option, so they have to make it. And if you've ever had flour and water before, it's basically glue. You can't just eat flour and water. You can try, don't go home and try. But it is literally glue. That is what it is. If you don't believe me, try and wash it off a pot. So that's what it is. You need to cook it somehow. So go back to bannock, which is the Indian brick that I told you about. One thing that was really cool is they would actually take bannock when they made it, and they would get like sticks, and they would put it almost like a hot dog on a stick and hold it over the fire. That's how they cook the bread sometimes. It was actually quite an ideal way to do it. But for the Israelite people, they had another way that they cooked it, and it's really cool. They cooked it on what's called a tanur. And I know I'm butchering the pronunciation because, well, on me. But what a tanur is basically imagine building a clay beehive about this high. This round, that high, and then you just cut the top off. And what they would do is inside they would build the fire. And so the way this would work is, it's nice because it's a nice big clay thing, it gets nice and hot. You have the fire burning, so if you want to cook meat or a stew, like again, a stew is a really easy way to eat with bread because you have the liquid and everything that goes with it to make your super dry bread nice. You can just pop that on top. But the bread, this is the funny part, and I've seen this done, it is super funny. Bread is kind of sticky, so when they would make a loaf of bread, they would literally just take it like this and just go, and it would stick to the side of that tanur, and that's how they cooked. It just sticks there. And then someone has to get like a hook or a stick and kind of get it off carefully and not fall. And that's how they cook and eat their bread. So it takes a while. You've got to cook it. That's why right now Mrs. Witzig is working very hard. That's why we borrowed all those pizza stones, because it's going to kind of imitate that tanur, that idea. So she's cooking it on a flat, hot rock, basically like that you guys will get to eat in a minute. But you've got to take the time to cook it, but you've also got to take time to let it just sit. Bread is never ready the second you mix it. So like this bread here, I came here after dinner. You guys, when you were all playing, I was here making bread because you can't just make it and eat it. It has to sit. Usually it has to rise. Italian bread, you guys ever had that nice Italian bread? Oh, yeah. I hate making Italian bread. You know why? It's like 3.5 hours. It's a long process, especially since you have to knead it so many times and do whatever you have to do with it. So there's always some sort of resting, rising, something like that. If you don't have yeast is actually fun to make it rise. If you've ever cooked with bread, the fun part is at the beginning you have to make the yeast proof. Which what you do is you get a cup of warm water and you put yeast in it and you wait for the yeast to fart. That's the best way I can say to explain it. It just lets off carbon dioxide. It's a nice smell. It smells a little bit nicer than farts. But that's really what you do is you have to wait for the water to start bubbling and farting a little bit, and then it's ready, and now you can start cooking or start mixing because now you've made sure that you have what's in there. There's another way to do it. If you've ever heard of Irish soda bread, you ever played with baking soda and vinegar before?
Yes.
Put that in your bread, and that'll cause it to rise. And I've done that before. It's kind of fun. It tastes a little funky, but I probably screwed it up. But that's the idea. Everything needs some sort of time to rise. So bread, the nice thing about it is it fills your stomach. The not nice thing about it, you can't just make it and eat it. There's no instant meal with bread, especially if you're making it yourself. So you've always got to take time to do it. This is where that story, some of you have done Passover with me before, and if you remember, we ate that really like crackery type bread. It was kind of flat and all this. Because the reason for the unleavened bread is what happened is when Moses was telling the people, hey, we're free, let's go. There's not really like a time like, hey, wait, we got to cook. We got to let the bread rise. We'll be there in like 4 hours. No, it's like, we got to get out of here now. So everything they had mixed, everything they had, they just mixed it, hurry, cook it, and take it on the road. Because they don't even know where they're going. They're just taking it with them. So that's why you have Passover has unleavened bread, because that's to help them remember the time they were in such a hurry with God's provision, they didn't even let the bread rise. It's part of who they are. So this is part of the amazingness of bread, is that yes, it takes time. Now, Mrs. Witzig, how are we doing this? Oh, it's looking good. I say that because it's fun. But the hard part with all this is what that means is if you are ever having to make bread, and this is why I want someone with a 30-hour family in each group, when you're hungry, it doesn't matter. So if you've ever done the 30-hour crayon with me, and some of you may do it eventually, and that's why they're shaking their heads, is because I'm slightly mean. Cruel, okay, sure. What we do is we live like the people do wherever we're studying. So that means at the end of the day, when it's like hour 27, and you're like, oh, I'm like, all right, time to start cooking. What? So never complain, no. And so then that's the hard part. Think of it as you're starving. Imagine being starving and then having to cook and wait and smell that bread cooking. Have you ever smelled bread cooking? That
It smells Red Aisle in Walmart or any grocery store.
So if you can imagine smelling that, if you can imagine smelling that fresh cooking smell when you have it eaten, because I know some of you right now are looking at this bread and going, that looks good. Yeah, you ate 2 hours ago. You're not starving. But that's just the effect of fresh bread is that, yeah, it makes it smell good. So in a moment, this is what's how many of you got ready? You got some ready? 4. First, perfect. Okay, this is what I want you to do. I want each group to come up. Oh, she buttered it nicely. I want one person from each group to come up and get a piece of bread. One person from each group. Just take it, take it back to your group. Oh, Liz is buttering it for you. Oh, I like smoking.
No, that's the only one I
Okay, this is what I want you to do. With your people in your group, break it off so each person has a piece. Do not eat it yet, but just take a good whiff. Yeah, of course it's hot. It's fresh bread.
I know.
Take a whiff. Get that smell. Get that smell. Breathe it in. Everyone's got that bread?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I'm holding the lady's bread.
Eat it. That's fine. That's fine. Tastes good?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Is this the one you ate that you left so much?
This is like the one from 30 Hour Famine 2 years ago.
I love that. I love it.
Okay.
like 8 of those.
So,
They were so good.
here's the other fun thing about bread and why you need to experience it. And Katie, your group has the big one, so if you want to share with the adults too, that'd be nice. There's nothing that replaces super awesome fresh bread instant. Like we were talking about this earlier. They asked me, do I cook at home a lot? Do I bake bread at home a lot? And I don't, because Lori is like, it's so good. She eats it like right out of the oven. She doesn't want it the next day. Fresh and hot, oh, there's nothing that replaces that. So when it comes to your relationship with Jesus, you want that fresh, hot, wonderful bread that you get in fresh, you put some effort into, that's made fresh, that's done right in front of you, or do you want the store-bought, prepackaged, been on the shelf a week, kind of bread? So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break you up. You're in your group, so we're going to give you your discussion questions. We're going to keep giving you fresh bread as we're talking. I know, there's more coming. So, Liz, it's that first set on top, I think, right there. She's going to hand each group a page.
Thank you.
We'll dive right in.
I love